clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Joining me today to talk all things NBA free agency. There's a lot of moving, a lot of shaking, and we're going to try to figure out and let you guys know if we think these moves are going to mean something, if they're going to mean nothing, or if they're going to actually end up being problems for their respective franchises, because a lot of money's been shaken, a lot of players changing their franchises, and there's a lot to break down. So let's bring him in. Cody O'Connor, back again to talk some NBA free agency. Did we talk Mets last time we spoke and NBA?
Yeah, we touched the Mets last time, and I think I told you that I didn't know what to think of them. They had just finished sweeping the Phillies, and then I don't think they won a game since, if I'm not mistaken.
My gosh.
It was that weird. Yeah, so they went through June without winning a series, which seems like some type of record. But they're undefeated in July. And, you know, who else but us are going to tackle the NBA in the first week of July and, like, really shake things up NBA world when everybody's, you know, taking time off, dog days of summer, you know. Not us, Pete. No vacations from the NBA.
Literally, it couldn't be us. It could not be us. And I'm trying to find the episode now that we did this. Was it the finals preview? Yes, it was June for. Oh, my God. Yeah. Cody, the difference a month makes. Golly. June 1st, you and I did an NBA finals preview. But in the very beginning, we just kind of like shot the crap about the Mets for, 5 minutes or so. And then everything changed.
We touched the Mets. And then the best part is we also talked a little NBA, like going into the next season, taking out the two championship teams, if you recall, and talking about everything changing. I mean, we're looking at the list right here. So much changes come July 1st, which makes it nearly impossible to make the predictions when we did, but we tried for you guys. Doesn't mean they'll be right.
There's a chance that we could be right here, and part of my overarching goal for this episode is to try to at least figure out a little bit on all this money went to these different players for different teams and et cetera, but how many of these different teams truly change their outcome, right? Like, we could talk quickly, and obviously we're going to go deep into a bunch of players here, but quickly you can talk about Fred VanVleet going to Houston and him helping them be better next year. But that's not really what we're talking about, in relation to the June 1st episode. We're talking about the Bucks and the Warriors and the Lakers and the Celtics, et cetera, the teams that are at the top. That was our conversation. And you could really make the argument that some of those teams are putting all their chips to the center of the table, and those moves very well may work out. And those also may work out for our predictions, if I remember correctly. But there's a lot to parse through, because those teams I just mentioned right there off the bat made some big-time decisions, some of which to stay with what they know, a la Draymond staying with Golden State, some of which to make big moves, like the Celtics making a big trade for Kristaps Porzingis. Those things are changing all the outcomes, and we're going to talk about all of it. But, Cody, before we do that, can I just get, 2 sentences from you here on the Mets? I need to just feel your vibe real quick. Are you miserable with no hope? Are you miserable with an inkling of maybe there's a little hope? To be honest, don't try to be like, oh, no, they're no good, I don't believe, but you're still watching every night with a little hope. I want the true Cody feelings here.
Yeah, and you got me on a 3-game winning streak.
I know. Bad timing. Maybe good timing.
It's a tough timing because I've been out for like 2.5 to 3 weeks. I've been saying that and I kind of alluded to it last time, right, that the pitching scared the hell out of me, right, relying on such old guys, and the bullpen is awful. I mean, there's really no way around it. The bullpen's been bad, and there's holes throughout this team. And my gut of guts says the worst thing that can happen right now is they go on a little run before the All-Star break, get it to 3.5, 4.5 games back, give you that glimmer of hope, push the chips in for this year, and then regret that when next year comes around and you're back in a similar hole. So my heart of hearts has the hardest time rooting, just being lose, right? Especially when I'm watching almost every night. I can't deny it. I want them to win every time they play. But I do believe the best thing for them is to ship out some of those older contracts, the Marcanas. Tommy Pham's value is through the roof right now. I don't think it'll ever be higher, like his OPS. But
right.
my thinking for long-term Mets hope is they sell a lot of these guys off. They bring up some of the young guys, see what you got in them the rest of the year. Who knows? Even those young guys could give you a spark because it's not like you're seeing the best of things with this group. So, not quite 2 sentences, not an English major, but there you have it. That's where I'm at.
No, that's what I was looking for. I said 2 sentences, but that always means like a minute and a half or so, which is exactly what you gave us, and that's what we needed because I think there's a possibility of them putting themselves in a race. Is that race for a championship? Probably not, right? But a race for a wild card, that's still possible. I know it feels crazy. I've been kind of saying it throughout June, even when it was the worst of times, that I'm tuning in and I'm feeling like every night when I look up my FanDuel app, my DraftKings app, and the Mets are like favored again. Why are they favored again? Because their team has the requisite talent to beat anybody. They have it in them. They haven't done it consistently, and we know this, and it is what it is. However, I still, like you, am watching every game thinking, why would the Mets not be able to have a 7-run game and only give up 2 or 3? They can do it. They haven't done it consistently, but it feels like it's possible for them. And that could still be possible, Cody, if they trade 1 to 2 to 3 of these pieces that are veterans, that can help others, that can do something for a team that's also a contender, the Martes, the Phams, the Canas specifically. And the Pham thing I haven't thought about, I guess because he's been the most exciting Met to watch over the past like 2 months. Yeah. And if me and you predicted that Tommy Pham would have the best OPS on the team in July, we'd probably predict that they're about 10 games under 500. So maybe we're right where we're supposed to be. But maybe that should be taken advantage of and moved to one of these contenders that needs one more bat, one more depth piece, and you can get a bullpen pitcher. Go figure. That could be important. I don't know. But
yeah,
we have. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. We'll see what they do. I mean, I kind of liked that they already moved Escobar for a couple pieces, like a couple arms, and they kind of got to rebuild the farm system with the arms because it really hasn't been anything since those guys all came up at the same time, right? When you had Syndergaard and Wheeler and Harvey and Steven Matz all come up together, albeit Syndergaard via trade. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where their focus has to be in. Maybe they can kind of do both. Like maybe they can compete with some young guys while moving some of the older contracts and try and piece up the bullpen or do something along those lines. I don't know. That's why I'm not paid the big bucks. Hopefully Steve Cohen does. And if there's one thing I haven't wavered on, it's that I do believe that this is a short-term problem that Steve Cohen will fix, and this will be a successful franchise because of the just who he is and what we've come from to where we are. I really do still believe that.
Yeah, the willingness to make those decisions is huge. And last thing on the Mets, because we're going to talk with the NBA for the rest of the show here. Do you know where Francisco Lindor ranks undoubtedly amongst shortstops in the MLB this year?
Depends on which category, but I do know.
I'll throw out OPS because I think that's the best catch-all offensive hitting category.
I know he just brought it up huge. He's got to be in the top 3. 7.
He's tied for.
Go ahead.
Tied for 4th with Xander Bogaerts, 1 point behind Dansby Swanson. So basically tied for 3rd.
Yeah.
1 point behind.
I believe he's top of the league in RBIs and home runs as well.
Top of shortstops in home runs, top in RBIs, amongst league leaders in RBIs. One thing that I will not waver on at this point as a Mets fan is I am not going to sit here and moan and cry and bitch about Francisco Lindor. It is not the business that I am in. He plays every single day. He's played an elite defensive shortstop, and he's been productive. He's been inconsistent from an average standpoint, but at the shortstop position, he is top 5 undoubtedly. It's like having a catcher who's having a semi-down year at the dish hitting and complaining. It's like, dude, your catcher is the 3rd best catcher in the league, okay? Let's pick our battles here, and I'm not picking to fight Francisco Lindor. That's just me. I wanted to put that out there because I'm still very pleased to see him in the lineup every day, to see him play shortstop every day, and to see him produce runs. So I'm here for it. I'm still going to root for them every day, and I've probably my blind spot as a fan, and that's okay with me. All right, NBA time, Cody. A lot of things happened. A lot of big numbers thrown out there. A lot of reaction to big numbers this year. It's almost like we get amnesia every single time free agency comes around. It's like we forget, Cody, and I don't talk about me and you. I'm talking about the collective of NBA fan. Twitter. Yeah, maybe just Twitter. But in general, even like my friends who aren't true NBA fans, but they're like tangential NBA fans and just sports fans, and they send a text to the chat like, yo, Fred VanVleet, 130 million? Like, what the hell is this league? Like, well, if you know what's going on here, he went to a team that was below the cap floor. They needed to spend on somebody. They wanted a veteran presence. It kind of makes sense. He was an all-star once, even if it was a backup. Like, whatever. It's like there's much crazier things in the world than Fred VanVleet. But people seem to, every single year, see these numbers in the NBA contracts and just lose their mind, right? Oh, my God, so-and-so got $100 million. This guy's $30 million per. Oh, the Lakers didn't go for that guy. What's going on? And then when it comes back to it, and you start looking at the rosters, and things start to make sense again, and the cap trickled up a little bit, and the luxury tax is going to be a thing next year, so you kind of almost have to spend a little more now, and that's something maybe we didn't expect, right? All these things come into play, and it makes sense. But when you come down to it, Cody, a lot of these players are hoping to make big impacts on their teams. And I do actually want to start with the cliched team. I do want to start with the Los Angeles Lakers, but from a perspective of how we're going to run this whole thing here, basically I'm going to bring up a player or a team who's brought in multiple players, Cody, and you and I are going to decide if the needle has been moved. And if anyone out there doesn't know what that means, which you should, hopefully, but the needle movers in the league actually change the outcome. They affect wins and losses. They're going to make the difference in the season for better or worse, whether it's 3 spots higher, 1 spot higher, 3 spots below, you get the idea. So I want you and I to figure out amongst these teams and players and these contracts if there's been needles moved for these franchises. That makes sense for you? That works?
Perfect sense, Pete, especially because you explained it to me pre-show.
There we go. So I do want to start with the Lakers. We're going to get into the bigger contracts and some of the guys like VanVleet and Kyrie and Kuzma, who got the $100+ million guarantees and all that crap. But to me, we're talking about a team in the Lakers who was a Western Conference final team last year, who made those changes at the All-Star break or at the trade deadline last year and became a completely different franchise with actual championship expectations. And they went just about as far as they could and ran into the best player in the league. Now, we enter this year, Cody, not saying like we have of Lakers past, where we go, oh my God, we're talking about the Lakers again? Jesus, can we give it up? They're not a championship team. It's too much. We talk about them too much. Today, I ask you, Cody, with the bringing back of Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, bringing in Gabe Vincent, Jackson Hayes, Taurean Prince, and losing Dennis Schroeder, Troy Brown, Malik Beasley, and Lonnie Walker, has the Lakers' needle been moved, Cody?
A teensy-weensy bit in a positive direction, I think. Because of the losses you named as well, it's almost like canceled out a touch, but they did make really good moves. The last one they made, the Austin Reeves contract, I don't know who got him to sign that deal. He's either got a bad agent or a very good friend up there in the Lakers front office, because that feels like he was very much underpaid. But maybe he wanted to stay there. Maybe it's a LeBron effect. Who knows? But they made enough good moves, seemingly like without a cap limit, right? Just because of how many of them they made, even though a lot of teams made a ton. But they are right around the same spot I think they were last year, end of last year, right? The team that we saw that went to the Western Conference Finals, not the one who before the year I think I had missing the playoffs, and for a while looked very smart about that. But they made really good moves mid-season. They made good moves this offseason, and I think they are right in that tier. They're below the Nuggets, right? I think the Nuggets kind of stand alone in the West. But I think the Lakers are jumbled up in that next grouping with, like, say, Golden State, maybe the Kings, as a team who's got a puncher's chance.
I think I agree their needle moved in a positive direction. I would go a little bit more than a tick. I think that, and it's always a little convoluted talking about them because, LeBron and AD could miss a combined 45 games, 50 games, and, they could be a 7 seed, a 5 seed again. However, assuming health at this point in July here,
right,
we could now say that they belong in that group. Where entering last year, it was actually the rational take to say they don't belong in that group. So, yes, of course, taking them from where they ended the year, maybe you argue it's a slight tick up. But from where they started last year, I mean, gosh, it's a whole new franchise. Where I think they made their biggest adds are twofold. It's Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince. They're replacing
agree.
Dennis Schroeder, Troy Brown, and Malik Beasley and Lonnie Walker. Malik Beasley was unplayable down the stretch and in the playoffs. Lonnie Walker had superhuman games in the playoffs that kind of carried his entire, narrative at that point, but he wasn't really very playable. And Dennis Schroeder, although he did a lot for them, he's not the most efficient player. He wasn't always the most consistent player. He was more of a spark plug type of guy. I think Gabe Vincent adds a much more sound point guard who's not going to do too much. He's not going to have the highs and lows. Yes, he'll have the highs of shooting a hot night and whatnot, but he's much more consistent. He's a little bit better, more of a consistent defender. I like what he brings to the table, but I think Taurean Prince is actually the big mover for them this year because that wing position for them last year was really hard to come by. And until Austin Reeves truly established himself as that number 3 for them, that was a lost cause. I mean, they were throwing out Troy Brown. They were throwing out Wenyen Gabriel every once in a while. They were throwing out all sorts of people who you just never had any faith to do much, right? So now you look at Taurean Prince to eat up those minutes, and they also still have Jared Vanderbilt. Those minutes that he can eat up as a really solid shooter, as a guy who can defend multiple positions, he's a good defender. He's long. He fits kind of with the LeBron mold. He could run a little bit in transition. You don't feel like he's a liability doing that. I think those two moves, Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince, are almost built in a lab to play with LeBron James. They're never going to ask for too much with the ball. They're never going to be relied on to do too much outside of catching, shooting, and being consistent role players. And that's what they're built to do. I mean, last year, Taurean Prince shot 38% from 3. That is built in a lab. Long defender who can do a few things and can hit threes. Gabe Vincent, same concept. So I like what they did a lot. And, coming into the offseason before free agency, I would have argued, they played above their heads and they're probably looking back at that 6 to 10 seed range again. And now you feel a little bit more confident that they could actually be a 4-5 seed, a 6 seed, instead of being a play-in team again, which they do want to avoid, even though they did just make it to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, you said it in the beginning, and obviously this goes for all teams, but a little bit more of a concern with the Lakers is the health, right? Older LeBron, AD's constantly in and out of the lineup. So when you make that prediction, you are assuming health. The Gabe Vincent almost addition right to the spot of Dennis Schroeder. It's like Gabe Vincent feels like the kind of guy who's going to do all the things that Dennis Schroeder did well, and then add to it as a shooter, as a scorer, as a guy who just got experience, and we just saw have those kind of unconscious type of games in the playoffs. But I love Dennis Schroeder, his tenacity, all the small things he does, takes charges, irritates the other team. It's like Gabe Vincent just came from Miami, dude. He can do all that stuff, and then he has a much higher ceiling than Schroeder at this point in his career. So I do love that ad. And then, of course, Taurean Prince, like you said, 3-and-D guy who's just going to kind of take a little pressure off LeBron defensively and just add another shooter on the outside to spread the floor, especially for AD down low to give him his space. So, yeah, no, they made really good moves, but they are still looking up at the beast up there in Denver.
Let's talk about another team that's still looking up at the beast, in my opinion, here. And I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors, who, if you look at their offseason maneuvers to this point, they bring back Draymond Green, 4 years, $100 million, $25 million annual, which is, a number that for Draymond Green may end up looking really bad in 2 years, but it makes sense. It's not crazy. It's not him getting, a max deal or $38 million a year. It's 25. It is actually a reasonable number. They lose Dante DiVincenzo to the Knicks. They lose Ty Jerome, who played some minutes for them. Mm-hmm. They bring in Corey Joseph, and of course, they trade for Chris Paul. So, Cody, with all that being said, has the Warriors' needle been moved?
I don't think it's been moved as weirdly as it is, because it's so different. You add Chris Paul and take out Jordan Poole. That's a huge combination difference. But you bring back Draymond, and it's different. I don't know how to explain this. It's different, it's just the Needles, to me, is still in the same spot. Like, they still have an outside chance because they have Steph Curry and that infrastructure. And you add Chris Paul, who I love his. I mean, I always love Chris Paul. I love who he is and what he brings to a team. Like, but he's also had a lot of rifts with this team. He's had his back and forths with Draymond and with Steph and even with Steve Kerr, that famous meme where he's, laughing at him and then walks away and does the, sourpuss face, which is, yeah, I love that meme too. I actually do that on a somewhat regular basis, but nobody knows. Just a joke from me. But, it's funny. Like I said, it's super different. It's probably going to be a little weird in the beginning, but I think the Needle is right where it was, which is this is still a team that you can't take lightly and has that championship, infrastructure, and a team that can always get hot and make a run because they got the shooting to do it.
I think I agree with you, and I'm going to try not to agree with you too much because that'll be a boring podcast. But sometimes you and I do see the NBA in a similar light, and I think that's a good thing as well because I think we're freaking right, Cody. Yeah. I think we're right. This Needle is exactly where it was before. It didn't move at all, and for every little signing they made and trade they made and loss they got, they went up and they went down, and they were right back where they started. To me, the only thing that really, really moves their needle is not an addition. It's not a subtraction. It's the health of Andrew Wiggins. Go figure. Cody, he missed half the season last year. If Andrew Wiggins was hitting on all cylinders the way he did in the year prior's playoffs, we could be looking at a different team. This is still a team that won the first round series against a good Kings team. Sure. They didn't really show up much against the Lakers. They played decently well, and they made it a series, but it wasn't too close. They're looking at a lineup right now that's weird. Frankly, it's weird. But what they have to their advantage now is they don't look at Chris Paul as like a do or die. We need him to be great to win. They have Corey Joseph, who's a nice add who could make sense for them. He's not much of a shooter, but the ball movement and his playmaking could be huge for them. Gary Payton's back. Klay Thompson's back. Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, all that stuff, they're all back. If Moody and Kuminga can actually be rotation-level players this year, that's a win. And if Andrew Wiggins is with them, just playing all season, they could look at him and say, dude, you're pushing freaking 30 years old now. You're 28 right now. You got to now be a dude. You got to be someone we could rely on, and I think they might have someone they can rely on. And again, Klay Thompson, second half of that season, he had a stretch where he looked a little bit like old Klay, at least offensively, not defensively, but he was shooting the lights out in that second half. Had his bouts in the playoffs and all that, but, it's still Klay Thompson. So like you said, their needle definitely didn't move up, but it didn't really move down either, and that is enough for them to be in position to make a run. And their big additions are actually who they're bringing back, and the continuity of hopefully Kuminga turning into what they thought he could be. Same with Moody, having a full year of Gary Payton again. And I do think Corey Joseph's a nice add for them. But Dante DiVincenzo did a lot of stuff for them. Yeah. Good sign now they have, and signed by the Knicks. They have 4 swings at the ball here with Joseph, Moody, Kuminga. That's only 3, and Chris Paul, I guess, right, to make up for what DiVincenzo kind of brought to the table. And I expect them to continue to be a middling top 8 team, so somewhere in that 3 to 6 range with a chance to make a run, but their needle didn't really move. Yeah. I agree with you, Cody. Let's hop over to the Sacramento Kings because I think why we just hit some West Coast action while we're here. They extend DeMontis Sabonis, they extend Harrison Barnes and keep him there. They re-signed Trey Lyles and Alex Len, who still blows my mind that I saw Alex Len playing minutes in the playoffs and looked good, looked meaningful. It was crazy to me. But they didn't really bring anything new to the table to the Sacramento Kings. Is this a move for you that you can say the needle moved positively because they were so good last year and they have a lot to build on? Or are you a little bit disappointed in their offseason thus far, Cody?
I wouldn't say I'm disappointed just yet because I don't know what's the move for them right now. What should they have done? Should they have reached for a guy who we think is a needle mover, but, then he takes away from somebody else? And that team, look, they lost in 7 games to the Warriors. There's no shame in that game, man. They were fantastic all year, won 50 games if I'm not mistaken. And, just kept it going. When all year it seemed like everyone's waiting for the Kings to fall off. When are the Kings going to fall off? And they didn't. They're a top 3 seed to end the year. They're young. They extended their guys. And I think they're the type of team who you probably see make a move at the trade deadline mid-season where they're like, all right, we need this, that, or whatever it may be. I'm perfectly fine with them not reaching for somebody, not overpaying someone, keeping the core they had that worked so well last year and trying to build on that. So I wouldn't say disappointed because I don't think there was a move for them.
I think the only argument to be made about their offseason is the Harrison Barnes of it all. They extend him to bring him back for 3 years, $54 million, about 17 or 18 million per year. And that last year was the glaring upgrade spot. But think about the wings in this league. It's kind of hard to find a wing that's undoubtedly better than Harrison Barnes that's available, right? These guys are eating up. You know what I mean? If you look through all the free agents who signed in that range of, what I say, 17, 18 million.
Yeah.
The people in that range were, Bruce Brown at 22.5, Jakob Poeltl, Dylan Brooks at 20 million per, D'Angelo Russell, Hachimura, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Herb Jones, who was restricted, doesn't even really count. Austin Reeves, who was restricted. Maybe you can argue they should have put a higher bid on Austin Reeves to drive up the price, screw the Lakers, maybe get Austin Reeves. Grant Williams, Dante DiVincenzo at 12 million. Are these guys moving the needles for the Kings? Or are they taking away, like you said, taking away opportunities from their 6-man extraordinaire Malik Monk, or more possessions away from De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, who is the bread and butter of that team? I agree. They should have someone who's a little bit more dynamic than Harrison Barnes. But that player kind of does not exist, Cody, and that's what gets so weird about these teams. And I actually liken the Knicks to a similar situation as the Kings. Yeah, go ahead. Go overpay and try to steal Rui Hachimura from the Lakers. And then you pay him $23 million and you complain that you're paying him $23 million. Yeah. What's the win in that situation? Even a Cam Johnson for the Nets, he's restricted. They signed him up without blinking, $27 million a year. You're not getting him if you're Sacramento. There's no one really out there.
Yeah, Kyle Kuzma, Jeremy Grant. We'll maybe talk the Jeremy Grant deal later. It's just those guys you could maybe argue are better, but they cost a hell of a lot more, and I don't think they are worth the deal for the Kings. I like the Kuzma deal. I like the Cam Johnson deal. I like them for those teams. I just don't think the Kings could have done it. That's really the only point. So the other guys that you listed that are grouped in that number, I don't know that any of them are actually better. And if they are they better for the Kings? And you already know what you have in Harrison Barnes. So that's why I'm fine.
Right. And also a guy who they seem to love, who they think is a good locker room guy, good leader, veteran presence, yada, yada, all that BS that, us fans don't really get to see. But Kuzma's the perfect example, Cody. You're paying Kuzma $8 million more a year or $7 million more a year than Harrison Barnes. He's a good deal younger. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's 5% better.
Right. I agree.
Is that 10% better?
He's maybe a little bit better. But that's the point.
He gets some better numbers because he gets more opportunity too, right? What does he do? And granted, he's played with stars in the past, so that should make you feel good if he's next to Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and whatnot. But are you getting much better? Is your needle really moving? Adding Kuzma for $8 million more and maybe ruining some flexibility instead of bringing back Harrison Barnes? I kind of agree with you. On that one there. There's just no one else.
Right.
There's no one else. And Rui Hachimura, we didn't spend much time on him, but let's just do 2 seconds on him here because we just talked about him with the average annual salary there. What do you think about that deal specifically for the Lakers? He was a restricted free agent. He signed back for $17 million a year. Probably an okay number, I think. Are you surprised, though, that that's where it landed? Because you could probably argue he could have got 23, and you could probably argue he's worth 12. So I don't know how to feel about Rui Hachimura.
I feel like what you just said describes Rui Hachimura's basketball game. You just don't know what you're going to get from the guy, and I think that's maybe why he levels out the middle, because his talent and his build and his potential are through the roof, right? He's a former top 10 pick. He's shown flashes as a guy who's, going to be a star of some sort, right? And then you have games where you go, where's Rui Hachimura? Is he not playing tonight? Oh, no, he's gotten 22 minutes. he's got 4 points because he's 2 for 11 from the field, like, and he hasn't done anything defensively. And it's just, I think that's why the number landed in the middle of what you said, because he's a very volatile player. That's kind of just who he is, and that's what we've seen so far. But he was great for them last year towards the end, and if you're the Lakers, good deal, bring him back, because maybe you found something in him that the Wizards fans cannot say they saw.
Yep. I'm not even going to add to that. Not even going to add at all. He does bring something to them that they didn't have and they need sometimes, but it's just not there all the time. Let's talk about Phoenix real quick, Cody, and I want to ask you specifically from the Bradley Beal trade. So not including the Bradley Beal trade, but from the Bradley Beal trade. Because I think trading Chris Paul for Bradley Beal and that whole situation there, like, it made the Suns more dynamic. It clearly makes their offense better, a little bit more reliable, even though Beal has his own injury history and et cetera. But we'll say without a doubt, Beal moved the needle in a positive direction for the Suns. However, the big question mark about the Bradley Beal trade wasn't about Bradley Beal, right? It was more about what the hell they could do with this roster. Now they have 3 max-level guys on the books, plus Ayton, who's damn near a max player himself. Nobody knew what they'd be able to pull off. So this is what happened. They lose Jock Landale to the Rockets, who was a nice player for them. They bring in Eric Gordon from the Clippers, retain Damian Lee, lose Torrey Craig, and then bring in a bunch of basically minimum-level guys. Keita Bates-Diop, Drew Eubanks, Chimezie Metu, Josh Okogie returns, and Yuta Watanabe comes from Brooklyn. It's a lot of names there, Cody.
A lot of names,
but they did not. So many letters, so many pronunciations.
Nice job.
They didn't have a lot of options, per se. So with what they had at the disposal after Bradley Beal, has their needle been moved for you in any direction?
They have the same problem they did last year. They don't have any depth, and you're scared to death that an injury happens and you're screwed. But the difference is you brought in Bradley Beal, who's not quite the injury-prone player that Chris Paul was. And I guess your thinking is if one of the 3 are down, not including Ayton, you'll be okay, right? If you have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, if you have Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, even if you have Bradley Beal and Devin Booker with the other guys, you're probably still okay. So regular season, I still think they'll be all right. But the thing that surprised me most, and maybe it's because I've been thinking it's going to happen for over a year now, but I thought they were going to move DeAndre Ayton to try and free up some of their space and try and add more depth pieces around those 3. I thought that was their move. I still think that was the best move. Maybe it just wasn't there for them. That's something I don't know. But that's what I thought was going to happen, right? That they were going to ship out DeAndre Ayton and try and get 2 to 3 guys as opposed to having just this one video game-loving half-ass player at center. Not a big DeAndre Ayton guy, if you didn't know.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. He's been underwhelming for a little bit now, and it is what it is. I think I'm going to go where they kind of moved the needle up for me a little bit, Code. I'm not going to lie.
Like it.
They ticked it up for me just a bit, and I don't want to say it's because of Eric Gordon, but it's kind of because of Eric Gordon.
Love Eric Gordon.
Right? So, like, their big problem last year, like you just mentioned, was depth. But specifically, it was depth at, like, wing and guard, right? And he's kind of a combo guard. He's the classic guy that he kind of came in the league too early, right? He was a combo guard before combo guards were cool. And, he's aged decently well. He's had some great shooting years, some poor shooting years. He is what it is. He's not typically a guy who you look at and say, oh, my God, Eric Gordon's the icing on the cake. But he can create as a secondary playmaker. He can shoot the lights out when he's right. He does that frequently. Their big problem still is that their backup point guard on the depth chart is Cameron Payne.
My guy.
And that's counting Devin Booker as their starting point guard, right? So their point guard situation is crap. But with Eric Gordon and Terrence Ross being able to supplement a little bit on that point guard position, I feel better about what they have at the table now. And also with Yuta Watanabe coming in, who we got to see on the local markets here for Brooklyn last year, a guy who is rangy, who can do some things on defense and transition, and he shot the freaking lights out last year. I actually feel like for what they had at the disposal, maybe they couldn't tick the needle all the way up to the top, but they were able to move it up in the right direction, and that's by adding one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 guys for a total of like $15 million. And that to me is impressive enough. They took enough bites at the apple. And another thing here with their depth chart, talking about DeAndre Ayton, maybe that trade just didn't come to fruition yet. I don't think that means it can't happen this season. And now you got Drew Eubanks, who's a bruiser, big dude who plays center. You got Metu, who people like a lot from Sacramento. Bismack Biyombo, who's good for his 12 minutes a game if you need him. That kind of allows them to punt on center a little bit and go, guard. One guy for 3 lesser guys and get 3 more bites at the apple at guard, right? If DeAndre Ayton can get moved at some point in the season for, a backup point guard who's unhappy, a guy on their rookie deal who they're not looking like they're going to extend, but's an okay player who needs a change of scenery, these things now exist for the Suns to do. And for me, that moved the needle enough, right? Because before they made all these moves, I was first one online saying, Bradley Beal, great offense. Your defense sucks and you have no depth. What are you doing? Now their defense is still not that good, but their depth is at least a little bit existent. And if they want to go make a trade for, this is the first person that came to mind, but like a Shake Milton type, if that guy is out there this offseason, he just signed a deal with Minnesota, but if someone like Shake Milton is out there, that, as silly as it sounds, is enough to solidify their rotation and give Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal like 4 minutes off a night. Right? Like, so I think their needle moved a little more than I expected, and maybe because I had such poor expectations is the only reason I feel positively about it.
We'll see. They have incredible talent, but a lot of holes, and I don't know if I wouldn't, like, I always think of the gambling perspective, right? And like, would I want to put my money on them preseason? Would I want to back them, win totals, whatever you want to call it? I don't think I would. I guess that's where I'm at with them. So we'll see. I hope I'm pleasantly surprised because my guy KD, man, I hope he gets one.
I think you're probably right, too, because of the market is going to be a little bit inflated in their favor, right? Like, they're going to be this shiny toy with the new big 3. People are going to call it a big 4 with DeAndre Ayton, even though he's been underwhelming for 2 years. Like, that's going to happen, and we're going to sit here and be like, all right, people, like, are we really going to get this excited about this team? Like, we shouldn't. We shouldn't yet, at least. We should let them play and be healthy for, like, 2 months before we do any of that.
They're going to be the New York Mets. On the sports book, at least.
Put a knife right through my heart, why don't you? Golly.
Right here with you, buddy.
Yeah, we did it. We did it together. All right, let's talk about. I figured since we've been talking so much Western Conference already, let's do another Western Conference team for us here. Let's just knock this one out because this is surprisingly one of the bigger movers and shakers of the offseason. I mean, we probably saw it coming because all the cap space that they had. Well, let's talk about the damn Houston Rockets, Cody. Let's talk about the Rockets. They bring in Fred VanVleet at $42 million per year, 128 overall. Dylan Brooks, 4 for 80, 20 per year. They bring in Jock Landale. They bring in Jeff Green, and those 2 guys they retained are nobodies. So they bring in VanVleet, Brooks, Landale, and Jeff Green. All guys from the outside, they're coming in. They have all these young players, all this talent. Is their needle moved, and to what point has it moved?
A slight uptick because there's nowhere further down I think that Houston could have gone. You know what I do like, and I don't think people will really see this way, but I do like the Fred VanVleet move. Like, even if it's a little bit of a high contract, you got to pay some guys. And, the talent of this team is in their young guys. Fred VanVleet is not the type of guy, I don't think, to be selfish in a sense of, like, not helping the young guys get where they want to be. So I like Fred VanVleet as almost like a culture guy and a guy that can win you some games by himself and get the mojo in the locker room feeling differently because you've won those games. Dylan Brooks, I just hate the contract. Like, we talked about it in our chat, and I don't think I really ever felt he'd be out of the league the way people had thought, right? But when you're a kind of guy who can be an irritant and you're in not even like the middle tier of NBA players, like he's a bottom tier NBA player, right? Like if you used like Tobias Harris, say, as like your middle tier type of guy, like Dylan Brooks is clearly worse than Tobias Harris, and I think Tobias Harris is we could agree he's a middle tier kind of guy. So
I think that's almost like you said, that's almost a slap to Tobias Harris because he's so clearly much better.
Right. It's just I want to kind of give that illustration of who is in that middle tier. It's still a good, damn good basketball player. Dylan Brooks is not necessarily that, and he's an irritant, a guy who maybe isn't a great locker room fit, and he gets $20 million a year over 4 years. I just feel like they had the money and they knew they had to spend it, but I don't think they spent it the right way. And I follow a lot of Thunder fan pages, and the constant I see is look what the Thunder have done with their cap space, their picks, their money. Look what the Rockets have done with their cap space, their picks, their money. Especially this offseason. Like, I just don't love some of those moves, even though I think they have good talent with some of the picks that they have. Like, they have some of those young guys. Sengun is somebody who I really enjoy watching play, right? I think Jalen Green takes his step. Like, they have some talent, they have some guys, but maybe it's just the Dylan Brooks move that's really, like, overshadowing. But $20 million every year in your cap is going to him, and I just don't see it with him.
He's so hard to root for too. I mean, I feel so positively about so many other things on this roster, but he really is the guy who drags them through the mud a little bit. It feels like dirty money, right? Like, it feels like it's illegal to now root for them because Dylan Brooks is there. Like, that's how unlikable he made himself throughout last year's playoffs and even before that, right? Like, he's been more unlikable than Patrick Beverley since he hit the scene. Right, because it instantly was so easy to say, oh, Brooks is like the wing Patrick Beverley. I find Patrick Beverley more rootable by a far now than Dylan Brooks, and that is saying a lot because Patrick Beverley has pissed me off for years now.
We're so
talking like he's so-and-so.
We're in such lockstep with that, but go ahead.
Dude, like, it almost, now that Dylan Brooks exists, it like opened up a space in my heart for Patrick Beverley in a weird way.
Like, literal lockstep.
And like, if Pat Bev got added to this team, I would be like, listen, that's the type of guy who's going to freaking grind, and he'll be a pain in the ass, and he's not that good, but he'll be a positive enforcer for that team. Like, you saw him in Minnesota. That was not a fake impact that he had in Minnesota. That was real. His tenacity was actually transferred to some of his teammates. Maybe not every day, maybe not as much as it should be for Cat, but for other guys, it worked well, right? But Dylan Brooks just sucks. Like, it just, you can't shoot that bad, take that bad of shots, and then talk the talk that you did. Now, it's possible that he's been humbled, right? He dealt with it all since that playoff run, since waking up the beast of LeBron James and that whole thing that happened. He didn't talk to the media, and maybe, just maybe, this is crazy to say, that he's going to take a slight step back from his antics. I don't know if that's possible for him. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I'm screaming at a cloud, but whatever. Let's just put him aside for a second.
Okay.
I love what they did with Fred VanVleet. It is perfect, Cody, and this is why. Their expectations are still low. Fred VanVleet doesn't get a monster contract for a team that's hoping to be a championship contender. If Fred VanVleet signs with, I don't know, the Clippers, or Fred VanVleet signs with the Sixers at that same number, you are now looking at a max contract guy who is looked at as somebody who should push the Sixers or the Clippers or a team in that nature over the hump. I don't know if Fred VanVleet is that guy at that number. We saw him be that guy at a much cheaper number for the Raptors back when they won the championship. That's great. But this team, listen to their depth chart right now. Their starters projected are Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Sengun. The problem with them last year, when they just couldn't win and they weren't trying to win, so it is what it is that Kevin Porter and Jalen Green, who Kevin Porter is now a backup guard, they're talented. It is undeniable. Kevin Porter Jr. is a guy who, when I watch, I am fascinated. I think his talent is really, really high. But he's inconsistent. He's a little bit, even though he's such a good passer, he's a little bit of a me guy. Jalen Green, definitely a me guy with the way he plays basketball. Jabari Smith, lost in the mix because his two guards are not worried about him. Alperen Sengun, talented dude, can get buckets, big mother hecker. Like, swept under the rug because his guards didn't care about him, right? Tari Eason did some fun things last year. A lot of transition, a lot of defense, some better offensive playing than we expected. Swept under the rug because his guards didn't give a shit, right? Now you bring in Amen Thompson, who is touted for some of his passing and feel for the game. You bring in Jock Landale, another good center off the bench. Cam Whitmore, we'll see what happens with his game. Wasn't my favorite coming into the draft. He fell. They got great value for him. You now look at this roster and say, what do they need? They need a point guard who is going to take care of some of the other people on this team. And Fred VanVleet is kind of more of a score-first type guard. He gets his shots off. We all know this, whatever. But he's a professional point guard who has played with other guards and other ball-dominant players and shared the wealth lovely, right? So now when Jalen Green's on his bullshit, taking step-back threes when he shouldn't be, when Kevin Porter's trying to cross over everybody in the league, Fred VanVleet can take the ball and say, yo, let's relax here real quick. Let's get Jabari Smith in a pick and pop. Let's get Şengün on the block. Let's regroup. Let's get this thing together. And I do believe that this is a big needle mover, not to put them into the 8th seed or the 6th seed this year, but we can now look at this franchise and say, competent roster, makes sense with complementary ball players. And on top of that, if Jalen Green makes that next step as the closer, scorer, assassin that he could be, that we've seen from time to time, that makes up for Fred VanVleet's weakness, where when the defense focuses on him late in games, he could have trouble finding open space, right? So I think this combo is really, really nice. VanVleet helps Jabari Smith, helps Şengün, and allows a little bit off the plate of Green for him to flourish in other ways. So there's my Rockets take.
Let's see what they do. Not gonna add. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I said all that, and they're gonna be 29.
Oh, there's some rough teams out west.
29 and 50.
They shouldn't be at the bottom.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Then again, you look at the West, and we're not going to talk about every other team in the West. Your Thunder are going to probably be right in that mix again, if not a little bit better with Chet Holmgren back. You got to be feeling good about that. Yeah. Timberwolves aren't going away. The Pelicans are always going to be nearby, possibly with their health being a question mark. You hope the Mavericks will be close to 500 now. You know, it's just a shame of a thing to say, but they should be above 500. The Jazz didn't necessarily get worse. The Blazers might suck really bad, and the Spurs got Wemby. So we said all that, and the Rockets could easily win 30 games this year, and they could still be the second or third worst team in the West. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just...
It might not even make you wrong.
Getting excited about
That might not make
nothing.
you wrong. You know, if they win 33 games, that's probably their win total on the year, right? They probably hit the over. So that might not make you wrong at all.
Yeah, I just like it. For those young guys, they needed somebody who could be the main hub, to be the hub of the offense. And Jalen Green needed that taken away from him. What does the pup think,
Rosie,
by the
what
way?
do you think? She gave me a look like that was kind of a the Rockets aren't going anywhere look. She kind of did like a look back.
Yeah,
like
I agree. She's making me question everything, honestly, at this point. She gave me the Chris Paul, Steve Kerr
Yeah,
look.
she did.
All right. So that's enough on the West. I guess last thing on the West, though, really quick, just to cover this up. Grizzlies bring back Desmond Bane. That's a no-brainer to me. Like, if you're an NBA fan and you're freaking out about Desmond Bane getting the number that he got, kick rocks, man. Desmond Bane's a dude. He's a bucket. He's a grinder. He plays defense. He can dribble. He can shoot the lights out. I'm all in on Desmond Bane. Are you in lockstep on that as well?
He's like, I love how Bill Simmons puts this. It's so simplistic, but he gives a shit. I just love those guys. I love that guy who's got the talent that matches the energy and a guy that is just going to go to war for you. So I agree. No brainer. Had to do it.
Perfect. And now last thing, Nuggets lose Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. How big of a detriment could that
Their
be for
losses,
the Nuggets?
I mean, that's not really to be swept under the rug. Bruce Brown was, I mean, maybe this was me, but I liked him going into the year. I think I mentioned him on our preview pod going into last year because I just watched him a lot with Brooklyn, and I just saw a guy who was never afraid of the moment, who was kind of everywhere but where he needed to be, you know, not just running like a chicken with his head cut off, but actually in the right places. Jeff Green, you know, veteran, I don't think that one's as big of a deal just because he is like, I don't know, 48 years old or something like that. I don't know. Jeff Green seems to have been in the league forever, but no, you know, they just have to replace them. It's not the end of the world. Obviously, it's not like the Nuggets are no longer at the top of the West. It's just it's not nothing either.
And that's where it becomes so obvious why it's that hard to repeat, right? Because your players look good, obviously, when you win a championship, and then they want to be taken by every other team in the league, right? Like Jeff Green's been on 42 teams already in this league, and you never knew when his value was going to run out. And now it's like, Nope, Jeff Green is very much wanted in this league right now, right? Like, Bruce Brown was already wanted in this league, and now he's more wanted than he ever was before. So I think they should be looked at as the number one team in the league, but they also do need to kind of figure out how to fill those holes. And maybe for them, it comes down to Christian Brown just stepping up a little bit more. They did bring in Justin Holiday. They have guys. They brought back Reggie Jackson. They still have KCP, Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon. Their core is very much there, but the Bruce Brown thing should not be slept on. He was so important. So important for them. All right, let's move on to the Eastern Conference, Cody, and talk about some of the needle movers out there in the East. One team that we talked at length about in our podcast about a month ago was the Boston Celtics. We expect them to be in that upper echelon of teams again, but the question for them is not about being a top 3 seed. It's not about making the conference finals. They are official at the point where it's championship or bust. They need Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to work, or they need to end it. They move Marcus Smart, part of their core players. The longest tenured Celtic is no longer with them. They bring in Porzingis just a few hours before we recorded today. Grant Williams got shipped out. But the Celtics are still very good. But however, Cody, are they good enough for you to say this is actually going to be their year?
Again, think of the gambling side of it. Would I put my money on it? I'd have to see it a little bit, but I'll say this confidently. I absolutely loved the Kristaps Porzingis move. If for nothing else, it was a way to shake up this group, but still keep your 2 superstars, right? Like, something had to change. I don't know that I or either of us knew what it was exactly, but it just felt like you got to do something different. I don't know how drastic it had to be, and I thought that was a great addition. If Porzingis is healthy like he was last year, he was looking like that guy, like he was just that dude. I mean, I don't know how else to say. He was fantastic for Washington last year. I think he surprised a lot of people. I think he's that guy as long as he's healthy, right? And that's his big question mark. But I think Boston got better with that. The Grant Williams thing kind of throws a little bit of a wrinkle, right? Because I was very high on Boston. I probably would have said a little bit more confidently, yes, this team is the best team in the East, say. Without Grant Williams, they got picks back for that, correct? It was just 2 second-rounders.
Yeah.
Right, so that is just something that, changes a little bit of my perspective. But again, the overarching thing is that I absolutely love that they brought in Porzingis, changed it up a little bit, got a big guy who can also score, stretch the floor, and a great rim protector. So you kind of have a little versatility with Rob Williams. You can give Horford some more breaks, which I don't know how he can do what he did last year because he was unbelievable at age whatever he is. I don't know, 36 or so. But, I think
49.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great move to bring over Porzingis. I think they got better. I think the needle was moved in the right direction. And they're still waiting on the Jaylen Brown signing, though, correct? Like he is still, or it's the extension that they're hoping for there?
The extension. Yeah, so he's in for this year, but he has not been extended yet. And, it could come out any second, right? Like we could be recording this podcast and we can get a text from, well, not a text, but a tweet notification from Woj that it's locked in. Or we can get a tweet notification from Woj that he's been traded, right? So
all possible,
I don't think that's going to happen. I very highly doubt that they're going to do that. I think what they do here is say, we got to give this one last go with Brown and Tatum. And if we can't come to an extension, we'll play it out. And if we win a championship, hopefully that's enough for him to stay. And if not, we'll try to sign and trade or do something. But I think they have to. I don't think they could afford to trade him for bad value right now. Like that would be a huge missed opportunity for them if they trade him just to trade him. If he's unhappy and he wants to be traded, I think you got to say, I'm sorry, we want you to play this year. And I'd rather you walk at the end of the year and get nothing in return, but actually try to win a championship this year. Because that might be their only hope, honestly. Quickly on Porzingis, though. Last year, 65 games played. Solid number for him. 50% from the field, 38% from three, 85% from the free throw line, in which he got to 6.5 times per game, Cody. And now, that's a big number for him, because if you watched him with the Knicks, he was a free throw guy early on, and then he blew out his ACL, and he was never quite the same. He was kind of this spot-up guy, didn't really know what to do in Dallas, found his groove back in Washington, and all things are good. But this is a guy you're adding to one of the best shooting teams in the league already, and you're putting him with Jason Tatum and Al Horford and Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown. There's a chance he could eat for this team, and it probably won't mean 23 points and 8.5 rebounds like he had last year. It might mean, 17, 18 points and 6 rebounds. But if that efficiency is even remotely close to what he was last year, holy shit, Cody, that's a big-time upgrade for them, because that's something you just can't find, especially with their team. Rob Williams, non-factor outside of the rim. Al Horford maybe gets hot every once in a while, but he's not someone you rely on from outside. And neither was Marcus Smart, right? Marcus Smart wasn't super reliable out there. Derek White, streaky. Malcolm Brogdon, not a huge volume shooter. This adds something to them that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like if Sam Hauser just grew 7 inches and became a rim protector. You know what I mean? It kind of works out well.
Yeah, it's weird.
All right, let's talk about the Milwaukee.
No, go ahead. It's just the Marcus Smart thing, too. And I really like Marcus Smart, but it felt like almost the right piece to move on from. I think he's going to do well in Memphis. I think that makes so much sense for him there. It's just sometimes you got to shake things up. It may not seem like the fair thing, but I really just love that move. Thought it was a good one.
For as important as he was to that franchise and that identity, I don't think he was a needle mover at this point. For all the things he brought to your playmaking and defense and whatever, he still left you short on other occasions in other spots. And I always appreciated Marcus Smart, but I never thought he was a driving force in their success necessarily. And Boston fans will probably argue till they're blue in the face that he was the heart and soul, and without him they were nothing, and yada yada. And maybe it's because I don't watch 82 Celtics games, but I watch them and I love what he does sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, you don't need that. That's replaceable. You can find that. I think you can argue that Brogdon and Derek White were just as good, if not better, right? So I'm with you. It's time to move on and shake it up. He was so very good. All right, Milwaukee Bucks. Bring back the big bringbacks for the Milwaukee Bucks. Chris Middleton back. Brook Lopez back. Obviously still have Giannis and Drew Holiday. They lose Joe Ingles. They lose Javon Carter. They bring in Malik Beasley, Robin Lopez, and they also, I think they technically have retained Jay Crowder as well. The Bucks, man, they're still up there, but has their needle moved?
No, but I don't think that's a bad thing either, right? I mean, their needle last year...
Didn't have to,
right,
I guess.
Their needle was championship or bust, and it is championship or bust. I hate to keep doing this Mets thing, but... the Mets brought back a lot of people this year, which threw their payroll up this huge number, but they had to make a lot of those moves, a ton of them, right? And it didn't seem flashy or sexy. It's like you're kind of the same team. It's like, yeah, you're the same team who won 101 games last year, right? So Milwaukee brings back Brook Lopez. They bring back Chris Middleton a couple years, right? And you're just running it back with this core who was good enough to win a championship. There's nothing wrong with that, even if it's not new and sexy and shiny for a lot of other people. It doesn't mean it's wrong, bad, or indifferent.
I did lose you there for a second on the connection on my end, but I'd imagine I could feel what you said there about the Mets analogy. I could probably edit it in post so I make sure I heard you, but to do it in summation, I can kind of feel what you said there. It's like, as long as they're playing at the level they're supposed to, they're going to be where they're supposed to be. Unlike the Mets, who have not played at the level they were supposed to, and they're not.
Yeah, and that happens, but it doesn't mean just because you can see it in hindsight that it's the wrong move or decision. It just doesn't always work out, or you're just a cursed franchise.
And it comes back to their situation, similar to the Kings. They weren't finding another Chris Middleton out there. They weren't. He doesn't exist. Chris Middleton's really good. He's a multiple-time All-Star. And if you ask me, their last 2 playoffs have hinged on his health, right? Giannis obviously got hurt in that Milwaukee series. If Middleton is actually hitting on all cylinders like he can, that Giannis injury doesn't hurt as bad, and you don't go down in that series to the Heat. right? And their only chance once they started playing better and Giannis came back from his injury, it felt like to me, and I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way when I watch the Bucks, I a lot of times feel like without Middleton, they're nothing. Not nothing, obviously. They're still really freaking awesome. But without Middleton, they don't hit the upper echelon like they did, right? Just kind of, and we're going to see it now with the Nuggets too. Without Jamal Murray and his freaking fantastic playmaking, shot making, all that crap, Jokic doesn't flourish and become the undoubted best player in the league. It's just obvious. People always want to say, oh my God, this guy carried them, blah, blah, blah. And that is true, but it's also true that Jamal Murray put the team on his back for quarters at a time, for games at a time. Chris Middleton, when they won the championship, was their closer.
Yeah.
He is their closer. And he does not exist on the open market. You can't find a Chris Middleton, because if you did, every team would be expecting to basically be elite. And that's just not the case. So, I mean, there's not much more to say about them specifically. Can we do the Knicks, or do we want to do the Sixers and Cavs real quick?
It's your podcast, dude, but I feel like, we'll
That's
probably
true.
go a little longer on the Knicks, so if you want to just kind of touch the Sixers and Cavs and then close out Knicks, that's up to you.
Let's do that. Let's talk about the Sixers first. The Philadelphia 76ers still kind of in limbo, which is kind of why I was like, I don't really know what to do with them. Like, James Harden is hanging there. Is he coming back? Is he going to get traded? Is he getting extended? What the hell's going on with James Harden? They lose Georges Niang. They lose Shake Milton. They lose Jalen McDaniels. And they bring in Patrick Beverley. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the Sixers' goal is right now. I don't know what they think is out there for James Harden, if they think they should or shouldn't extend him. But I think they're at a serious crossroads, Cody. As of today, their needle has moved down. And it's not because of Embiid or Maxey, and it's not because this team is now trash. They're still solid. They're still good. But they're rudderless right now, in my opinion. And I don't think they have a firm grasp on their future at the moment. And to me, it sounds like when are we going to talk about Joel Embiid wanting to leave Philly? It's going to come out to me, are they going to have to move Maxey to get someone else? Like, where are they going right now, Cody?
I guarantee you Sixers fans are right along there with you. They're like, what is going to happen here? That's the conversation that I've had with some of them. And I guess what you'll say if you are trying to be positive about them is Daryl Morey waited however long last year it took until he shipped out Ben Simmons for what he felt was the fair price. And so, he's got a great relationship with James Harden, so maybe you're banking on him saying, we're either going to get the right price for him or we will not trade you. You are with us as you've opted in, and we'll run back what we have until or if we find a suitable trade. Because you can't just trade him for scraps, because if you do, you're probably right that Embiid's the next one out, right? Or he might be the next disgruntled superstar that says, hey, I've given you guys 8, 9, 10 years here. You have not given me what I've needed to succeed to make a real run. I want out, which happens seemingly every single year with one or two superstars in the league. So they are very much at a crossroads, and they have to make the right decision. And maybe that's why it hasn't come out yet, because they're waiting for what they seem to think is the right decision. But I don't know what it is. I don't know who's going to give up too much for Harden. It seems like the Clippers were their move, and I don't know that they're going to give back what the Sixers want. So we'll see.
And what it keeps coming back to for me with the Sixers is twofold. On the James Harden front first, it is undoubtable that he won them 2 games, basically, in the playoff, in that series, right? Like, that they lost in the playoffs. Like, he was so good in 2 games that he was the main force behind victories in the playoffs. And then he was so bad that he was the main force behind losses in the playoffs. What do you do with that? I don't think that there's a better option out there. However, if you're Daryl Morey, do you say, let's just give him the extension and we'll figure it out later? Or do you say, let's not even go down that road and probably not be a championship contender this year? Because that's what it comes down to. This team with Maxey and Embiid and not bringing back another star-level player is not good enough. to be a championship contender. They're good enough to be a top 6 seed. They're not even close to championship level. So I don't know what the hell they're going to do. I don't know what they should do with James Harden, but their roster is just not adding up to me at all. And right now their needles move backwards. And even if they re-sign James Harden, their needle at best has stayed the same. And everyone, me, you, and everyone else is going to say, second round Sixers back at it again. That's just what they've been. And they're if they make it there, right? Because the East has gotten a lot better. All right, let's talk Cleveland Cavaliers here. They made some moves. They did a lot of things, kind of. And this is the real question. This is a perfect question for this game of needle moving here. Because they bring in Max Strus from the Eastern Conference champions, Miami Heat. Max Strus now a Cavalier. They resigned Karis LeVert. They bring in Georges Niang, another guy who the Sixers lost. They bring in Ty Jerome, who can maybe play some backup minutes. And they lose Robin Lopez. Oh, well, that's fine. He didn't even play for them anyway. I don't know either here, Cody. Did their needle move at all?
Slight uptick, maybe, right? Like Max Strus is maybe a slight uptick. I don't know that I love the deal he got. I think he got paid for, which is what happens all the time. He got paid for those couple weeks in the playoffs, which, if you're saying it the opposite, I'd be a big-time hypocrite. So I don't have any problem with you paying a guy for that. It's just I don't know how sustainable it is. I do like Georges Niang. I think he's a good basketball player who is very undervalued. He plays sneaky good defense for a big, slow white guy, right? He just kind of knows where to be and kind of knows how to use his body, get in front of you. And he can, shoot the lights out some nights. He can, go on his own 9-0 run. So I like Niang. I don't hate Max Strus. And I think that team is maybe just a little bit better, but they're probably in about the same spot. And we talked about it last time. Their move is their guys internally to grow and get better. That's how they get better. That's how Cleveland takes a step. Because they kind of went all in last year with Donovan Mitchell. And it was a great move in my eyes. And I still will defend that even if it doesn't work out. You go for it, right? But does Evan Mobley take a step? That moves your needle. Darius Garland, I don't know how many more steps he has because he's really freaking good. But if he continues on that path and even gets a little bit better and the team gels together, that's their way to success. I don't think there was too many big moves that they were going to be able to make.
Yeah, they were one of those teams, again, that like their cap situation is in a place where, Mobley's getting a max extension at some point in the next 2 years. Darius Garland's already been extended. Mitchell makes a lot of money. Allen makes a decent chunk of change. They don't have flexibility. They don't have the ability to get a lot better. What they did do is shore up 2 positions that were the least bit shored up last year, and it's a backup big in Niang who can shoot the lights out when their offense looked abysmal at times in that Knicks series when they couldn't get Mitchell or Garland going. They looked lost, right? They had no one else who could make shots. Max Strus can solidify that wing position for them. He's not a huge wing. He's more of like a 2-3 than a 3-4, but plays good defense, can shoot the ball, knows how to play the game. That's a positive add. The big positive add for me is that hopefully this Max Strus signing can limit their Karis LeVert dependency. And when you depend on Karis LeVert, you are depending on volatility because that's who Karis LeVert is. All he does is go off and look like one of the better scorers in the league and then be terrible, right? So that's the Karis LeVert experiment going into the playoffs against the Knicks last year. I said it on this podcast many times. Spent way too long talking about Karis LeVert. If he is their go-to guy, yes, he might win them a game. He will also lose them 2 of them. And that's exactly what happened. You cannot rely on a guy like that, unfortunately, to carry your offense, to carry your bench. It's not going to be consistent enough. And Karis LeVert and Niang are not the types to carry a bench. But when you now supplement the Garland and Mitchell minutes to give them breaks each, you now have 2 competent players who can shoot the ball really well next to them rather than Mobley, who hasn't stepped out to the three-point line yet, and Jared Allen, who can't shoot, right? So I think it moved them in the good direction. And when you look at the Eastern Conference, I think this puts them as solidly as possible at the 3rd best team in the East. So for that, their needle has moved up to me, but they haven't crossed the threshold of Milwaukee and Boston.
Well, that's a good transition to go right into the Knicks, right? Because if you've got them 3rd, you got them ahead of your Knicks. So I guess we're going to dive right into that, right? I got nothing else to add on Cleveland.
Yeah, nothing else to add on Cleveland because that's it, right? They got one tick better. Their needle moved better, and it was probably, unless they made some like absolutely outrageous trade where they got Chris Middleton, or you know what I mean? Like they weren't going higher than that, right? It's going to take them gelling and Mobley specifically taking a huge leap offensively to help carry them in the playoffs because he couldn't do it last year, and they also couldn't stop Jalen Brunson.
Who could?
That's a different story. Who can, right? Who can? Another thing on all these contracts, Cody, why we talk about the Knicks here is a perfect way to go about it. How freaking insane does Jalen Brunson's contract look now that some of these numbers have been shot out in this offseason?
Isn't it so great to feel so smart trying to defend this contract for over a year and being like, the cap is going up next year. Players are going to get paid an absurd amount. Jalen Brunson's a very good basketball player. He's exactly what the Knicks need and what they haven't had in the lifetime that we've pretty much watched them, right? And it's like, now you're looking at his contract compared to everybody else's, right? Like Fred VanVleet's making, what, 10, 15 million more per year than him? And you're like, holy shit, Jalen Brunson, man, what a deal. Wow, the Knicks. And people are starting to finally hop on board. It's like, yeah, we've been trying to say this for well over a year now. I feel very, very vindicated in that.
Yeah, he's making $26 million this year, and then his contract was actually front loaded, so he's making just under $25 million the year after that. And then his 29-year-old season, the 25-26 year, is a player option, which he'll probably be in the position to decline and make a lot more money, which is fine.
Yep.
Go get him. Hopefully by then, the Knicks have made strides in other facets, and they could pay him a max deal if that's what he deserves, right? But yeah, the next 2 years, like if you just relate it to, like you said, VanVleet, Kyrie Irving,
Kyle Kuzma's
I'm looking just for some of the other
amount.
guards out here. Yeah, Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton's making $10 million more per year. He's making the same as Draymond Green. He's making just a few more per year than Pirtle and Brooks.
And of course, at the top of
God.
our list, Jeremy Grant, who we haven't really touched on.
And Jeremy, who we haven't even spoken about yet. It sucks because the Blazers are so irrelevant, and they just gave him a $160 million deal, and we didn't even talk about it. The biggest deal of the offseason. What are you going to say? Jeremy Grant is an okay player. Right? He's a decent,
He played well
good
for
player.
OKC. He was on that team with Chris Paul that went to the playoffs. I think he's a fine basketball player. He's a nice player.
You could even say that he's good.
He's in that middle tier, right? He's in that tier with Tobias, probably just below him. But he is a guy that you add to a championship team, type of team, and say, he pushed our needle, he can push us over the top as our fourth guy, say. He's not, he's making $32 million a year. He got an absolute bag. Good for him. That's a funny contract to look at.
Yeah, he's going to get Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. to death now. Those two guys who got the big deals in that year when the cap went up and everyone got bad deals and whatever. Like, then Tobias Harris still can't shake that, right? Like, he still gets shit on for shooting 50, 40, 90 basically every year. Like, I like what he said in his little press moment that he had a couple weeks ago. He's like, go ahead, go find a 6'9" guy who could defend multiple positions who shoots 40% from three. Go ahead, have fun. And he's right, but he's also wrong because he's not that good, and he makes too much money.
With Tobias, the basketball player, just the bag he got. Sorry.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But let's talk about the Knicks specifically. Really only one big move of note for the Knicks here, and obviously we now put to bed how great Jalen Brunson's contract in. It's amazing. But they bring in Dante DiVincenzo for 4 years, $50 million as an average annual salary of just over $12 million, which is like an extremely reasonable price for a guy who's an extremely reasonably decent player. And I think that's kind of the end of like how I feel, Cody, about the Knicks right now. I said it on my Twitter. I know you said you saw the tweet. All these people getting big contracts. Not many of them are you and I coming out here on this podcast. Oh my God, I love what this guy does for this team. I love what that guy does for this team. Oh, what a great fit. Oh, like this is amazing. Thank God they spent that money. I'm happy, Cody, that the Knicks didn't do that much. So here's the question. Did their needle move, though?
No, not really. but it's okay.
It didn't.
Because of what you said.
It didn't.
You don't just want to sign a guy and pay him just to do it, just to make a splash, which I feel like the Knicks have done in the past and have kind of been burnt on. And they didn't do it this year. And the other moves they made, they have Josh Hart come back, right? He opts in. He's back with the team, back with that group. And, they sent out Obi Toppin for a couple draft picks. Maybe they used that as trade bait somewhere down the stretch. I liked Obi Toppin's time, but I think it was ready for him to move on and see what he can do elsewhere and whatnot. But their needle didn't move much. And it's kind of funny, Pete. Like, we came on after that series, and I think I was a little bit more on the side of trading Julius than you were, but I still think you kind of agreed with that. And Pat was the one saying, what are you going to get for him? Are you sure you're going to do that? And my point was, and still is, you just kick the tires on it, see if you can get something. But as the East shook out and these players got signed, I was so okay with them keeping the status quo and building on what they have and getting the superstar or the next star player there for the right price and at the right time, right? Like, my whole point then was make the calls, see what's out there, and if it's reasonable, try to do it. But I was never trying to push this agenda of just trade Julius for 50 cents on the dollar. And I'm glad that they didn't do that. They didn't have that mindset with their free agent signings, and they have the mindset of, we've got a good group, we can compete in the East, and we'll see what we can build from there. And I like that they didn't just reach for someone.
I almost, in hindsight, I even see more of Pat's point, right? Because think about who is out there, who is tradable, who is signable, and none of those guys excited me for the Knicks, right? Like, I knew there was a certain group of guys who were unavailable, right? Like, Jaylen Brown wasn't getting traded to the Knicks. It wasn't happening. There's no world in which I imagine the Celtics trading Jaylen Brown to the Knicks. Damian Lillard didn't make sense. Mikal Bridges wasn't getting traded to the Knicks. None of these things were happening. Chris Middleton. Sure, I would love to have Chris Middleton. He would actually move the needle for this team. He ain't coming to the Knicks. He's re-signing with Giannis, right? Like, we know this. I would have loved to make a play for Cam Johnson. He's a restricted free agent. We weren't getting him either, unless you're going to pay him $35 million a year, and then that's stupid, right? So you think about all the opportunities to make these moves on the margins, yada yada. Like Herb Jones, would love to have Herb Jones. He's restricted. What are you going to pay? $8 million, $10 million over asking price? $15 million over asking price? Not going to happen. Bruce Brown, thought that was within reason. That could have been possible. I would have liked to turn the tables on Bruce Brown. Would have had to mean that you probably would have had to move Fournier since he got the $22 million from Indiana. So I kind of get it that they wouldn't go in that route. Again, Gabe Vincent, not a needle mover. Max Strus, not a needle mover. These things all make sense to me, and it makes me feel even more confident in what Leon Rose has built in New York to this point. Because in years past, this wouldn't have been good enough for the Knicks. They would have had to do something else. They would have had to add in some sort of splashy name to put on a poster, to have a fun press conference with, to ask, Derrick Rose if this is the new super team like they did in 2017 or whatever year that was. And this Knicks regime doesn't seem interested in that. And that makes me confident that they have a goal to be back in that 4-5 slot. And again, a lot of Knicks fans can hear me say these words and be like, that's not the right mentality. You got to have the winner mentality. You got to go get it. You got to trade Randall. You got to get this. It didn't exist. It's not out there. And guess what? Maybe a Randall trade comes to fruition at some point during the year. Maybe an RJ Barrett trade comes to fruition at some point in the year. Both of those trades I would explore, but it didn't exist this offseason. And I'm so happy that they basically are running it back, plus Dante DiVincenzo, who's another solid player who's going to be additive to this rotation instead of bringing in a bunch of guys to say that they could. And for what? Fred VanVleet wasn't doing nothing with the Knicks. It's just Jeremy Grant. I ain't paying him that much to come to the Knicks.
Over the top.
So there's no point. There was no point in none of that conversation, because when it comes down to it, their best bet right now is to run it out with Brunson as now officially the guy in New York, not question mark 50-50 Randall Brunson. It's Brunson and then everyone else in Randall and Barrett and yada yada. They did what they had to do. I have no qualms that their needle didn't move. And by their needle not moving, they very well may be more comfortably in a 4 seed with home court advantage than they would have by taking a swing, moving pieces, and falling on their face.
I mean, it's just like I saw a trade package for Paul George that included R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, and picks. No, you're trading away what has made your team what you are for a guy who plays 40 games a year, and you just has not really seen him perform in the playoffs recently, at least. Right, so at least not to the.
Yeah, he's had one good playoffs.
So there we
recently.
go. Right, so the point is, they have seemingly got a plan that they're sticking to, right? And maybe they did kick the tires on some of these guys. That's something that we're not going to know, but they didn't reach. Like I said, I just feel like that's a positive, right? They were positive by not overarching and going for guys that just aren't going to put you over the top and will eventually put you in a bind down the stretch. If you do sign Jeremy Grant, you're really limiting what you can do down the stretch. They still have those options available to them, and they're going to compete this year. So, good move by the Knicks. I like that they didn't do too much. Small adds, good pieces, run it back, see when the trade's available, if it is.
Yeah. And you know what? They moved Toppin, which we did not mention yet, that Obi Toppin gets moved to Indiana for second-round picks and BS and whatever. And that's a specific situation where clearly Toppin and Tibbs were not getting along. And I'd probably lean on the side of Toppin just because we know how Tibbs is. But, the Knicks are going to be okay without Obi Toppin. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, they're going to be okay without him. And the Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo combo will supplement a lot of that crap anyway. So, they have to make moves. They have to add maybe at the deadline or make a little move here and there. Right now, they're looking at a pretty weak backup plan for Randall and Mitch Robinson because, Mitch Robinson misses time, and then it's a lot of Hartenstein and Sims again, and Randall playing 40 minutes. That might not be the best thing, but there are ways to see this team making good strides. And Paul George, in theory, in a vacuum, in a bubble, because he gets hurt all the time, I would have crushed people. Sorry, crush is the wrong word. I would have killed to have Paul George on this roster. I would have been thrilled to move R.J. Barrett and 5 first-round picks for Paul George in a vacuum, because he is what the Knicks need, an elite-level wing, but that's, again, what everyone wants and needs. They just don't exist, right? They don't exist. So what you do is you bring in now 2 backup wings in Hart and DiVincenzo who can play a little 2, little 3, little 4, and make things happen. And you don't have Paul George, and you probably just limited your risk by a whole lot when your reward probably wouldn't go that high with just Paul George added and all those other pieces lost. So, Knicks did the right thing, 100%. Anything else on the East Conference? I think maybe we can quickly just shout out the Pacers, perhaps, who, they bring in Bruce Brown, but, that's kind of it. I don't know. Is there anything else that jumps out to you with this Eastern Conference here, Cody? Because I think some of the lack of spark in the Eastern Conference also kind of goes in the Knicks' favor, to be quite honest. Part of the reason
I think we're both kind of not taking back our stance on Julius, but a little bit more accepting and understanding as to why they don't have to make drastic moves like maybe we would have thought. Seth Curry going to Dallas is a good move for Dallas, back over there with that group. That's a good move. I love Seth Curry's game. I love what he brings to the table to any team he goes to. He just seemingly works flawlessly. Bruce Brown, as much as I like him, I like him as a contending piece. I think he'll help Indiana, but I really like that guy as a piece with a team who is Denver. I mean, he was perfect with Denver. I thought he was great with Brooklyn when they were up there. But he's a really good piece. I don't see Indiana making crazy headway moves. No, I'm just trying to go through and look, but I don't think there were any other free agent moves.
There's nothing.
Miles Bridges is back in the league.
That's basically it. And, he's obviously did some terrible stuff and deserved to be suspended and whatnot.
He's a good basketball player.
He's a good freaking player. He's a good player, man. And you know what? The Hornets still are far away, probably, from being anything special or anything of note. But he makes them a lot more interesting. I'll say that. You look at their depth chart now with LaMelo, if he's going to be back and healthy. Rozier, the other Martin twin, Cody Martin, who's not bad. They bring in Brandon Miller, PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges. All right, frisky, not irrelevant, not like never on the league pass rotation, but they're still
one team I wonder about is Chicago. If they are going to try to ship guys out and kind of just reboot this whole thing, and if Levine's a guy that maybe you see as a part of a Harden deal or something along those lines, right? Like, they have some guys that can move the needle for teams that will change some of our thoughts as of today. But no, that's really all I'm looking at. I think we covered everything.
Free Alex Caruso.
Another guy like a Bruce Brown, like right in the same category as Bruce Brown. Just a real good needle mover, a good deadline piece for a team.
It's almost like wasted in Chicago. It's like because they're not close to contendership yet. So all these beautiful things that Caruso does on the floor, playing defense and in transition and, dunking on people, getting fouled. I hate to do the white guy thing, but him and Austin Reeves have some similarities. Reeves is a little bit better of a creator and shooter, but that energy that they kind of put in the team with the transition and the steals and all that stuff that they do, it's like you kind of can't find that all the time. Josh Hart is very similar in that regard, right? Like they do all these things that when they're on your team and you know that you're a few pieces away, God, they make you feel real good as a fan. We didn't talk about your Thunder. Can we just do that before we say goodbye? I know we're already got almost an hour and a half here. Do you have anything to get off your chest with the Oklahoma City Thunder and Chet Holmgren's return?
I've watched both their summer league games so far. Man, first of all, Chet is literally exactly what they were missing last year, like a big rim protector, just a guy who can rebound the ball and like end possessions. That was like something they really had a hard time with, just finishing out a possession by getting a rebound, right? Chet's someone who can do that, who can hold down the paint. And then the thing that I keep seeing about him from multiple guys, one of them I think was Pat Beverly on his podcast, just how he is not afraid of anybody or anything, and that he's the type of guy who loves a challenge and will go right back at somebody. And you just love to hear that about one of your guys, especially a guy like Chet, who's the number 2 overall pick, who's going to be a huge addition to this team, hopefully. So obviously I'm super excited about him. And if you don't know him yet, you're going to. If you missed out on Jalen Williams last year, J-Dub Jalen Williams, you got to tune in to see what this guy does on a nightly basis. I mean, he is everywhere, and he's just adding to his bag seemingly on the fly. His confidence is sky high. He really could have won Rookie of the Year. I think it just started a little too late for him. But this team is loaded with depth and talent. They added the guy, I'm going to blank on his name, but from the European League, who I've seen a lot of really good things about. Milic, I think, something along those lines. But he was the EuroLeague MVP and just kind of brings like a veteran presence as a backup point guard, work along with Josh Giddey. They just have so much depth and talent on this team. They are primed to start to make their push upwards at the top of the West because this is the time to do it while you got a lot of guys on rookie deals. So just really, really excited about what they're going to put out on the floor. They're going to be a fun watch, if nothing else. Yeah, true.
Well, they were already a fun watch, Cody, and that's not good enough. That's not good enough for me. Okay, I want to hear it right now. Can they be a playoff team and not a play-in team next year?
At least a team who wins their play-in game to make the playoffs. Like I think they're a 7-8 seed, worst. Maybe they sneak into the top 6. But dude, they're just loaded with talent, and it's not like it's all young or unproven, right? Outside of just Shai Gilgeous, who I think everybody knows now, you got Lou Dort who does his thing, and then there's just pieces around. Like Isaiah Joe shot the lights out last year. He's a really good piece. Aaron Wiggins doesn't really get talked about at all, but I really like what I see Aaron Wiggins do as a 3-and-D guy. Trey Mann has been lighting up Summer League and has like kind of that microwave off the bench. They just have so many options that they're not relying on these one or two guys. You can get sparks from anyone, and if the coaching is what it's been and what it looks like it can be, and you're playing the guys at the right moment, their ceiling is huge already, and they're just getting started. There's flashes. It's not the same, but there is a flash of the Thunder team that, I fell in love with 10, 12, 15 years ago now. Just crazy to say.
Yeah, last year it kind of felt like the East was stronger, and it probably because it was more clearly strong at the top, right? Like Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, Cleveland felt like a serious foursome of talent, where last year with Phoenix's issues and Memphis's issues with John Moran and the Clippers' health injuries and the Warriors not being right and the Lakers not being good until the second half, it felt like the West was weak, right? But you look at the Western Conference and you see Dallas at 11 and you go, are they going to be 6 games under 500 again? Are the Pelicans going to have like the worst injury luck again? Maybe because Zion, right? But like those are some of the teams in that range. The Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards are still pretty competitive. The Lakers are there. The Warriors. You kind of got to hope for the Clippers to fall back, but then again, God forbid they're healthy and you don't know what I mean?
It's
like
tough sledding.
It's tough, dude. I think the Thunder are going to be awesome and fun to watch and good, and I want to so badly say that they're a clear top 6 seed, but I think you were very measured there, Cody. I think you might be right. It's tough to say that they're that good.
They're very good, but so is the West, and the teams above them are proven and got the vets to do it, but
they're not
think
leaving
OKC
the conversation.
I think their coach, Mark D, who I don't want to try to pronounce his last name. I think he's a good candidate for Coach of the Year this year. I just looked at it on DraftKings at plus 1,000, and kind of along there.
Ooh,
right? I mean, if they
tasty.
do what you think, if they're a top 6 seed, right, you'd think there's every chance that he is a Coach of the Year candidate, right? Because that's usually where it comes from. It's not going to be like Mike Malone, right? It's not going to be one of the teams who was just on top. It's typically a team who came from the bottom tier and moved their way up quickly, right? Mike Brown won last year, right, from the Kings, right? And that's just kind of how it goes. So I like him there. And, if we're staying on the betting track, one more thing. Wemby's minus 200 to win Rookie of the Year. That's no value. And he is a huge man.
No.
Not wishing this on anyone, but, there's injury luck that goes along with this. Chet Holmgren's at plus 450. He's got the year to watch his team play from the bench. He's in his second year. He's considered a rookie in the NBA. He's got all the talent. He's 7'1". He put on 13 pounds. He's got a bag, and he's going to get confident quickly, I think. So just a little value if you're going to, if you're not going to lay 200 to win 100, take a look at our boy Chet Holmgren, because I think as his stock rises in the summer league, those odds might change a little bit.
Wow. Cody O'Connor leaving the Nuggets for the end. That's a good one. I love that.
Yeah.
I really, really love that. That's a great thought. Like when you started off that little point there, I was like, who's he about to plug? There's no other rookie on Oklahoma City. I kind of forgot that he's a rookie. I completely forgot. That's an incredible idea. Wow. Chet Holmgren plus 450. That's good. Well, last thing I wanted to say, it's kind of mean, honestly. It's a little bit rude to you. It's a little bit rude to you. Because before, when you said I've watched every Oklahoma City Summer League game, the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, I remember those days. Watching my team's Summer League games because this is going to be their year. And then I'm thinking, like, that was literally last year. Like, literally, like, last year and every year before that, I was like, can't wait for the Knicks Summer League because I can't wait to watch Obi Toppin or Emmanuel Quickley or Miles McBride or whoever that, or Frank Ntilikina. Let's throw it back. Why not? And then I was like, wow, I would be such an ass if I actually said that out loud. Like, Knicks make the playoffs one time, and I'm like, yeah, I remember those days where I cared about the Summer League.
Yeah, Summer League, huh?
Meanwhile, on Saturday when they play Saturday, Sunday, they play freaking 2 games back-to-back. I'll probably watch both of them. So I'm right there with you.
You just got a couple guys you like to watch, and Chet obviously being, the number 2 pick from last year. Got to see very little of him. I want to keep watching him. And I knew Jalen Williams was playing in it too. which made me bet on them betting summer league, but whatever.
Smart.
Yeah, they lost tonight, so I lost. But that's okay.
I watched Quickly last year in summer. Dude, I watched Quickly last year in summer league, and it's like, oh, he's playing a different sport, right? Like he's literally so much better than these guys who are rookies and going to be out of the league, by the end of summer league. And I'm like, Quickly is just way too good for this. They still lost too many games, but I even remember back in the day, Donovan Mitchell's summer league. This is a deep cut for nobody cares except for maybe me and you. You might not even care. Donovan Mitchell in the summer league that year was so good. I was like, I love this guy. He's going to be a beast. Look at him, blah, blah, blah. But you know who else was elite in that summer league and then got hurt? That might give it away. He was playing a different sport than these undrafted rookies. Dante Exum. My boy was cooking. Remember Dante Exum, the Australian guy? Number 5 pick in the draft. And I'm like, wow, year 2 is going to be huge for Dante Exum. And then he broke his leg. I was like, fuck.
Yeah. So, summer league doesn't always translate as we have. But sometimes it does, as Donovan Mitchell, man. Great eye on that. So it's fun to watch.
Jalen Williams will definitely translate. He's a beast. All right, Cody.
Yeah, he's good.
That's more than enough for today. I appreciate you greatly talking NBA with me for an hour and a half. Thank you so much. Good luck to your Thunder in the Summer League and the Knicks. Obi Toppin's brother playing on the Knicks Summer League team, which is hysterical. And let's go Mets. How about that? Let's go Mets. Did that start already?
Yeah, they are 0-0 fourth inning. I got it on the background. Who knows?
There we go.
I just don't know what to root for these guys. If they lose, it's what it is. And if they win, I'll get sucked back in and I'll hate myself for it.
I'm trying to get sucked in. Pause. All right, that's all we got. Subway Sports Talk. Thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you guys soon. You know where to do. Subway Sports Talk on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcast app, Spotify, YouTube. Rate, review, comment, the whole nine. We appreciate you very much. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.